Last night, while a storm was tearing through Florida, my landline rang. The screen showed a name I hadn't seen in decades. Clara, home. But Clara, my daughter, she's been gone for 30 years. She drowned in the ferry accident I witnessed with my own eyes. I picked up the phone and heard her trembling voice. Dad. I'm so cold. Then silence. I don't know if it was a dream, a strange signal, or a miracle. Before I tell you the rest, subscribe and tell me where you're listening from, because you won't believe what happened next. I still remember that night. The wind howled through every crack in the house, and the waves slammed against the wooden walls like they wanted to swallow everything whole. The name Clara, home, was still glowing on the phone screen, even though the cord had long fallen loose. I sat frozen in my chair, my heart pounding so hard I could almost hear it. 30 years. 30 years since I saw my daughter pulled beneath the sea, and not once, not even once, had her voice left my mind. But last night, it spoke again. I picked up the receiver. It was ice cold, yet somehow I could still feel her warmth in it. Everything around me went silent. No wind, no waves, only the steady ticking of the clock, each beat striking straight into my chest. In my head, another voice whispered, "George, you're old. You must be dreaming." But on the screen, the record was clear. Incoming call. Clara, 2:11 a.m., 3:33 minutes. I wasn't dreaming. I got up and stepped onto the porch. The storm had passed, but the sky was still heavy and gray, thick with the scent of salt. Out there, my old dock trembled under the last gust of wind, and between the blur of water and sand, something glimmered Clara's flashlight. I knew it instantly. Her initials CW were still carved on the handle, the letters I'd etched myself when she turned 12. I ran down the beach, my boots sinking into the wet sand, heart racing. The flashlight lay there, faintly glowing, though its batteries should have died 30 years ago. I picked it up, and under its dim beam I saw footprints, small ones, bare, leading toward the sea. I froze. A chill ran through my spine. They weren't mine. I was wearing boots. These were light, soft, like those of a young girl. I followed them step by step, the waves whispering beside me until the trail stopped right in front of her memorial. A small wooden marker I'd built with my own hands. Clara Whitman, 1977, 1994. The sea took her, but not my love. At the base, someone had placed a fresh sprig of lavender, Clara's favorite flower. I dropped to my knees, trembling. That was impossible. I'd lived alone here for 20 years. 10 kilometers from the nearest village. No one ever came. I turned back toward the house. The light in the living room flickered, then went out. A door slammed open. Instinct made me run. The front door swung wide, the cold wind rushing in. Inside, the wall clock had fallen, its hands frozen, at 2:11, the time of the call. And on the table, our photo me and Clara had flipped over. On the back, written in purple ink, was a line in her handwriting. "If I'm gone, don't stop looking." I dropped into the chair, gasping. The room spun around me. I've never been a superstitious man. I've spent my life at sea. I believe in wind waves and compasses. But this was beyond reason. I opened the wooden drawer beside me and took out an old tin box I'd kept since the day of her funeral. Inside were a ferry ticket, a few photos, and the letter Clara wrote before that doomed trip. I'd never had the courage to read it again until now. I unfolded it. The smell of old paper mixed with the damp, salt air. The first line hit me like a wave. "Dad, if I don't come back, promise me you won't stop looking for me. I'm afraid of the dark, but I know you'll bring the light." Tears burned down my cheeks. For 30 years I lived in silence, convinced she was gone forever. But now her voice, those footprints, that flashlight, it all felt like Clara was reaching out. From somewhere I couldn't touch. I went to my study, turned on the old computer, and searched for every report on the 1994 ferry disaster. Most files were gone, erased. Only a few archived copies remained. I scanned the passenger list line by line, and then I saw it. Clara Whitman's name wasn't there. I thought it was a mistake. I checked again, and again. Still nothing. Only one small note at the bottom, one unregistered passenger, identity unknown, presumed deceased. I froze. Unregistered passenger. Who was that? Who had they buried in Clara's place? A gust of wind shook the curtains. I clenched the old ferry ticket in my hand. The faded letters glowed under the lamplight. Voyage 314. Key Haven to Havana, March 2nd, 1994. I remembered the day they showed me the silver bracelet, the one I gave Clara for her 17th birthday. It was all they said they found. But now, I wasn't sure it was hers. Maybe it was a mistake, or maybe something far greater. I stood by the window staring at the sea. The first light of dawn brushed the horizon with a pale orange glow, and in that moment I knew I couldn't stay still any longer. If Clara was still alive, or if her spirit was calling me, I would find the truth. I gripped the flashlight tight, its weak glow reflected in my eyes. "All right, sweetheart," I whispered. "I'm still listening. Lead me, even if it's only through a dream." And for the first time in 30 years, I felt something I thought had died with her hope. I couldn't sleep that night. The storm was gone. But inside my head, everything still churned like restless waves that refused to die down. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Clara's voice, small, trembling, distant, like it was rising up from under the water. "Dad, I'm so cold." Those words spun around in my head until I had to sit up in the middle of the night, turn on the light, and stare into the empty house, hoping to find something. But there was nothing. Only the wind slipping through the cracks and the damp, salty smell of the sea. When the first light of dawn came through the window, I was still sitting there, eyes burning with exhaustion. I stepped out onto the porch, holding a cup of coffee gone cold. The footprints on the sand were still there from last night. I thought the wind would have erased them. But no. They remained clear, leading toward the sea. I don't believe in the supernatural, but I stopped believing in reason a long time ago. Since Clara left, the line between dream and reality has blurred like water stains spreading across an old map. I put on my jacket and walked down to the beach. When I bent to look at the prints again, I noticed something strange. They were fresh. The sand around the edges was still damp, not yet dried. And at the end of that trail near the broken dock, I saw something wedged between two planks, a photograph. I pulled it free. Under a film of salt, the image came into focus, Clara and me on her 16th birthday. It was from a roll of film I thought had been lost in the accident. But what froze my heart was the writing on the back, faint purple ink smudged by time. "I'll find my way back." I gripped the photo tight, the chills seeping into my palm. That handwriting. It was the same as in the letter I found last night. It couldn't be coincidence. Someone, or maybe Clara herself, wanted me to see it. I went back inside and pulled out the old wooden box from under the table. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, and the investigation files from the 1994 ferry disaster. I had never truly read them. Back then I was too broken, I just wanted to bury it all. But now, with Clara's voice still echoing in my mind, I forced myself to face it. The records said the ferry Voyage 314 left Key Haven at 9 a.m., carrying 46 passengers and 7 crew members. Out at sea, it hit a storm and sank within 18 minutes. 31 dead, 22 missing. But at the bottom of the page, there was a single chilling note. One unidentified female survivor, rescued by Cuban fishermen near Isla de Pinos. Transported to Havana General Hospital. Identity unknown. I had never heard of this survivor. The newspapers never mentioned her. A living girl, no name, no family. Taken to Cuba. I set the papers down, my mind spinning. Hope and fear tangled in my chest. What if that girl was Clara? But how could she have lived 30 years without reaching out? I turned on my computer. Typing old words into the search bar. Voyage 314 survivor, Isla de Pinos, 1994. Unidentified woman rescued. Most results were scraps, fragments of forgotten archives. Until one small article appeared from a Havana local paper dated March 10, 1994. A young woman approximately 17 to 18 years old was found unconscious near the Cuban coast after a storm. She carried no identification and could not remember her name. I read the last line over and over, could not remember her name. My chest tightened. Could Clara have survived, but lost her memory? I tried calling Havana General Hospital, the place where the girl had been taken. After a few long calls, I was transferred to the archive department. An old man's voice came on the line, raspy, slow-speaking English with a Spanish accent. "Señor, we had many patients from the sea that year, but one case." Yes, I remember. A girl with pale hair. She kept saying, Key Haven, before she forgot everything again. I held my breath. "Is she still alive?" I asked. "I don't know, senor." She was transferred north to a clinic in Mexico 2 months later. The name on the paper was Elena Cruz. My mind reeled. Elena Cruz. A stranger's name. Yet he sounded so sure. Before hanging up, he added, "If she's the one you're looking for, she lives in Santa Lucia now. Small town by the Gulf. I remember because she sent a postcard once thanking us for saving her." I sat there silent. The pieces were falling into place. The call in the night, the footprints in the sand, the drifting photograph. They all pointed in one direction, Santa Lucia, Mexico. I stood open the closet and pulled out the old suitcase I hadn't touched since I stopped going to sea. The smell of leather and salt filled the air. I packed a few clothes, the ferry ticket box, and Clara's flashlight, the one carved with CW. I didn't know what I was chasing, a miracle, a delusion, or the last echo of a father's grief. But I knew one thing. If there was even the smallest chance to find my daughter, I wouldn't let it slip away like the tide. When I stepped outside, the sun had just climbed above the horizon. The morning light shimmered across the water like trembling silver. I looked back once at the house, 30 years of memories and sorrow trapped within those walls. And through the soft breeze, I thought I heard a whisper, "Dad." I tightened my grip on the wheel and murmured, "I'm coming, Clara. Wherever you are." The engine roared to life, fading into the rhythm of the distant waves. The coastal road stretched southward toward a name that might hold the truth behind 30 years of silence, Elena Cruz. The trip took 2 days. I drove along the Gulf Coast through endless roads washed in sunlight and salt. The farther I went, the more the memories came flooding back. Clara's laughter on the ferry deck, the smell of lavender in her hair, and that final image of her waving before the waves swallowed her. I didn't know if I was chasing the truth or just clinging to a ghost. But every time I thought about turning back, I heard that voice again. "Dad, I'm so cold." And that voice, it wouldn't let me stop. When I crossed the border, the sea changed color, deeper, heavier, quieter. I reached Santa Lucia by late afternoon, a small town resting by the shore, red roofs glowing under the sunset like old scars. No one hurried here. People moved, slowly, spoke softly, and carried the scent of salt on their skin. I parked in front of a small roadside cafe and asked a woman about the name Elena Cruz. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Elena, she teaches English at the village school near the old church. Greenhouse lavender vines by the door." Lavender. My chest tightened. I thanked her and drove on. When I turned down a narrow street, I saw it immediately: pale green walls, white wooden door, and a cascade of lavender swaying in the wind. I killed the engine and sat still for a moment, drawing a long, shaky breath before stepping out. My hand trembled so badly when I knocked that I almost dropped the photograph I'd brought. The door opened. A woman, maybe in her 40s, stood there, long brown hair, sun-touched skin, and gray eyes that seemed to search my face for something half-forgotten. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice rough. "I'm looking for Elena Cruz. Yes, that's me, she replied softly, cautious. And you are? I held out the photo, the one of Clara and me on her 16th birthday. Do you recognize this picture? She stared at it for a long time, long enough for me to hear the slow ticking of a clock inside her house. Finally, she looked up, eyes glistening. I've seen this photo before, she whispered. In my dreams. Many times. But who are these people? My heart stopped. That's me, I said quietly. And my daughter. Elena stepped back, her fingers trembling against the table's edge. I don't know why she said, voice breaking, but I feel like I know you. Every night I dream of a man standing in the ocean calling my name. I can never hear him clearly. I just know. I want to reach him. I couldn't speak. The room seemed to sway around us, the framed pictures, the faint scent of coffee, her uneven breathing. I reached into my jacket and placed the old flashlight on the table, the one engraved with CW light from the window glinted off its worn metal surface. Elena froze, staring at it. I've seen that, she whispered. In my dreams, I was holding it, and a voice said, Don't turn off the light. Dad will find you. Silence filled the room. My breath grew heavy. Everything, the phone call, the footprints, the lavender, the light had led me here. To her. Do you know, I asked softly, that 30 years ago a girl named Clara Whitman disappeared in a ferry accident off Key Haven? Elena frowned as if searching deep inside herself. Clara, she repeated slowly. That name, it's familiar. I've heard someone call me that. In a dream. But... She pressed her fingers to her temple, wincing. Every time I try to remember, it feels like something tightens inside my head. I stepped closer, my voice trembling. Maybe you are Clara. You were rescued after the accident, but you lost your memory. The hospital in Havana has the record. She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. That can't be. I was born in Mexico. I have a birth certificate, a job, friends. But do you remember your childhood, I asked? Do you remember who your parents were? The question silenced her. A minute passed, only the sound of distant waves. Then she whispered, afraid of her own words, No, I only remember the sea and a man calling me his little girl. I couldn't hold back anymore. I stepped closer, voice shaking. That man was me. Elena stared at me, eyes wide, caught between fear and something like belief. I pulled out the old ferry ticket and laid it on the table. This was my daughter's ticket. She never used it. Voyage from Key Haven to Havana, the same route where you were found. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. A tear fell onto the paper. If what you're saying is true, she whispered, then who am I? I've lived my whole life as Elena Cruz, but inside something's always felt wrong, like I'm living someone else's life. I nodded, my throat tightening. Maybe we both had time stolen from us, Clara, but we still have a chance to take it back. She looked up, eyes red but bright with something new. If I really am your daughter, I want to know the truth. I reached into my pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper, a phone number written in faded ink. The doctor who treated you in Havana. Her name's Lucia Marquez. She might have the answers. Elena's gaze moved from the paper to me. In her eyes I saw confusion, fear, and deep within the fragile spark I'd waited 30 years to see the hope that my lost daughter might still be standing right in front of me. Elena and I left for Havana the next morning. The sky was a dull gray, heavy with clouds that threatened rain, just like the day I lost Clara 30 years ago. I drove. She sat beside me, silent the whole way. Her eyes stayed fixed on the window, her fingers tracing the edge of the old ferry ticket I'd given her. Every now and then she glanced at the flashlight resting between us, as if afraid that touching it might break something fragile, something barely holding together. I didn't say much. Every gust of wind, every hum of the tires on the road felt like it was stretching the distance between two worlds,
a father searching for the daughter he lost, and a woman trying to understand if she truly was that daughter. By 3 in the afternoon, we reached Havana. The city still breathed the air of the 90s, faded yellow walls, old cars crawling through narrow streets, and the salty scent of the sea clinging to everything.
I stopped the car in front of the General Hospital, a pale white building edges grayed with age moss crawling up its windows. Elena hesitated as she stepped out. Her gaze wandered down the long corridor, her face filled with a strange sense of recognition.
"I've been here before," she murmured.
"I don't know why, but I remember this smell.
Medicine.
And something old." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe your memories are starting to come back." We found Dr. Lucia Marquez in her office. She must have been in her 60s now. Her expression shifted the moment she heard the name, Elena Cruz. When I told her our story, she fell silent for a long while. But when I mentioned Voyage 314, her eyes widened. "I remember that case," she said slowly. "One of the most haunting of my career. A young woman was brought in unconscious, covered in cuts and bruises, no identification. When she woke up, she couldn't remember anything. She just cried and asked, 'Where's my dad?' I turned to Elena. Her face had gone pale, lips trembling. 'Are you sure?' I asked. The doctor nodded. 'I'm certain.' She had a small scar on her wrist, shaped like a crescent. I thought it came from a seashell. When I asked, she said something about a bracelet her father gave her when she was little. Elena said nothing. Then slowly she rolled up her sleeve. The scar was still there, faint but clear, carved by time itself. I felt my throat tighten. 'Is there any way to be absolutely sure?' I asked, barely managing the words. Lucia nodded. 'A DNA test. The hospital still has blood samples from 1994. If you agree, I'll compare them with hers.' I nodded immediately. But when the nurse brought in the kit, Elena took a step back. What if the test says I'm not her?" she whispered. "What if everything I've seen, everything I've dreamed, is just an illusion I looked at her for a long time?" "No matter what the test says," I said softly, "you're the one I've been searching for 30 years. Nothing can change that." She bit her lip, then nodded. The samples were taken simple, but tense enough to make the air feel heavy. While we waited, Dr. Lucia invited us into the old archive room to look through her records. She searched through a dusty cabinet and pulled out a thin folder. When she opened it, a photograph slipped out and fell onto the table. I froze. In the picture was a young woman, bruised face, wet hair, eyes closed. Even through the bandage wrapped around her forehead, I knew that face. Clara. Elna stood beside me, staring at the photo. "That's me," she whispered. "I remember. That blue bedsheet. I was lying there." Lucia looked at us, her tone solemn. "I think there was a terrible mistake back then. The police sent the list of victims too late. The hospital misidentified another body as Clara Whitman, and the girl who survived, no one knew her real name. When we asked, she said only one word, home. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Then, the girl I buried," Lucia nodded gently, "wasn't your daughter. It was another girl found with Clara's belongings." Elena covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. I could hear my own breath shaking, the sound blending with the distant crash of waves. For 30 years I'd mourned at the wrong grave. I'd spoken to the dead, never knowing my daughter was still breathing somewhere. Lucia's voice softened. "The DNA results will be ready tomorrow. But in my heart, I already know. She's your daughter." We left the hospital in silence. Elena gazed out toward the sea where the sun was sinking into the horizon, painting the sky in red. Finally, she spoke, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to feel. All my life I believed I was Elena. But if I'm really Clara, it means I lost 30 years of being your daughter." I took her hand gently, afraid to break the moment. "It doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is, we're here now. No matter where your memories are, I'll be right here." She turned to me. her eyes caught between fear and hope. Far off, the waves struck the shore again like the ocean itself was answering us, as if the same sea that once took her away was now bringing her back. That night, as we drove out of Havana, I looked up at the sky. A single star flickered faintly above. I whispered, "If you really are Clara, give me a sign. Anything." And right then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. The screen lit up. Clara. Home incoming call. I stared at the phone vibrating in my hand. That name, Clara. Home glowed on the screen, bright and undeniable against the dark. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I couldn't bring myself to touch the answer button. Beside me, Elena or Clara stood frozen, her face pale as chalk. Are you going to answer it?" she whispered. I nodded slowly. Every sense in my body felt locked in place. Finally, I took a breath and pressed accept. No voice, only the faint sound of waves, steady distant. For a second, I thought it was just the sea outside. Then through that hush came a laugh, soft, clear, young. Clara's laugh. 17 years old, echoing through 30 years of silence. "Dad." A whisper followed, barely there. "I'm still here." Then the line went dead. The screen went black. I stood there shaking, every trace of warmth draining from my hands. Elena's voice trembled. That was the same voice from my dream. I gripped the phone tighter. No, not a dream. My daughter's trying to reach us. We didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window of the small inn, staring out at the sea, straining to catch another sound, another sign. Elena curled up near the window, knees drawn to her chest, eyes wide open, lost somewhere between fear and awakening. Outside, the wind rose, the same howl I'd heard on the night the storm took Clara away. By morning, Dr. Lucia called. The DNA results were ready. When I held the paper, my body went numb. I read line after line until my eyes reached the last DNA match, 99.97%. Relationship father, daughter. The paper slipped from my hands. Elena covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. I couldn't tell what I felt, joy, disbelief, grief, only that my knees gave out and my hands trembled as I reached for her. "You're Clara," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You really came back." She nodded, smiling through tears. But it wasn't the kind of smile born from happiness. It was the fragile smile of someone who's found a piece of herself and doesn't yet know how to live with it. Lucia quietly left the room, giving us space. I turned toward the window. The ocean outside shimmered with sunlight, the same ocean that once stole my daughter, now giving her back. Different name, different life, but the same soul. Elena wiped her cheeks. I remember little things she said softly. A blue wall, a silver bracelet, and a man's voice calling me little star. I laughed through tears. Yes, little star. That's what I used to call you every night before bed. She looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, "The little girl inside me still hears that voice. But I'm not her anymore." I nodded. Time doesn't just take memories, it reshapes the heart. I couldn't ask her to be the same child I'd lost, and yet I couldn't see her as anything but my daughter. Elena, Clara, both. That afternoon we walked along Havana's shore. The breeze was gentle. The air carried the scent of salt and lavender. I didn't know how that fragrance found its way here, but Clara smiled when she smelled it. "Lavender," she said softly. "It makes me feel safe." We stopped near an old pier, the one where the survivors had first been brought ashore. A broken wooden bench leaned sideways in the sand. Clara touched it gently. "Dad," she whispered. I remember now. I was sitting here. I thought I was gone, but someone pulled me up and said, "No, you're not done yet." I stood still, barely breathing. Then I woke up in the hospital. She went on, voice trembling. I didn't remember anything. Just that someone was waiting for me. I pulled her into my arms. I never stopped waiting, Clara, not once. The sun sank into the water, painting the waves in deep red, and just as the light faded, I heard it again, the faint chime of my phone. I pulled it out. Clara, home. This time I wasn't afraid. I answered. No words. Only the sea, the wind, and a soft, familiar laugh, the laugh of a 17-year-old girl who once called me Dad. Elena looked at me, eyes glistening. Maybe, that's the part of Clara inside me saying goodbye. I shook my head gently. Not goodbye, just hello. Between two souls sharing one heart. She smiled through tears. Dad, I think I've finally found home. I said nothing, just held her hand tight. Far out on the horizon, a light blinked, the kind that guides ships back to shore. I looked up at the sky, the one thing that never changed. And in the wind I heard Clara's voice again, calm, distant, full of love. I never really left, Dad. The sea just kept me until you were ready to listen again. I smiled, eyes closed. Somewhere in the breeze, lavender drifted past, the scent of memory loss, and a reunion untouched by time. And I knew then, no matter the name, no matter the life, my daughter had finally found her way home. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this story. If you want to hear more strange, emotional, and unbelievable stories like this one, hit like, share it, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Every week I'll tell you a new story. And who knows? Maybe next time you will be the one to find what you thought was lost.